Welcome to lesson 1 of our HTML Basics series. In this video, we'll dive into the fundamentals of HTML, the language that forms the backbone of every web page on the internet. Whether you are a complete beginner or just need a quick refresher, we'll cover everything you need to get started building your first web pages. From understanding HTML tags to creating a simple structure, this lesson will set the foundation for your web development journey. Let's jump in and explore the basics of HTML. Before we begin, we are going to need two pieces of software: a web browser and a code editor. A web browser lets us view websites on the internet. It's also going to let us view the website that we create in this course. The most popular web browser for web development is Google Chrome. A code editor helps us write our HTML and CSS code. The most popular code editor for web development is called Visual Studio Code. To install both of these, go to google.com, search Google Chrome and VS Code. Download it, then install it accordingly. Once we have those two installed, we can start the course. We'll begin by learning what HTML is. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, tool that we use to create websites. Every website, from YouTube to Amazon, uses a combination of HTML and CSS to create everything that we see on the website. So we are going to create our first HTML file and our first website. We are going to create a new folder. This folder is going to contain all the code for this course. I'm going to call this HTML CSS course. Next, we are going to open this folder in our code editor. Now let's create our first HTML file. We are going to click this icon to create a new file. And we are going to call this file website.html. We have to make sure that this file ends with .html. This tells a computer that this file contains HTML code rather than just text. HTML is basically some instructions you give to the computer. We are going to learn our first instruction, which is less than, button, greater than. And we also need to type less than, /button, greater than, but our code editor might autocomplete this for us. This is an instruction to create a button. And inside the button, we are going to have the text button. Now let's save our file. To open our new website, we are going to go to the folder that contains our code. We'll find our HTML file, right-click, and select Open with Google Chrome. Now you can see that we have our first website that has a button with the text button inside. P tag defines paragraph. Write paragraph text between opening and closing tags of P tag. Now refresh the page. You can see paragraph text. You can easily rearrange it. Tag defines hyperlink. Add any text to it. We add link to YouTube. Attribute href indicates the link's destination. We add YouTube link to it. Refresh the page. Web page updated. Click on the link. YouTube page is opened. Every element have multiple attributes. To add other attribute, give one space. We are adding target attribute to our link element. It determines whether this link opens in the current page or in a new tab. By default, if we don't have a target attribute, it opens in the current page like this. But if we set the target attribute to _blank, this link element will open in a new tab. Go to our web page, refresh, and click YouTube link. It will now open in a new tab. By using attributes, we can modify different parts of this element's behavior. Something that a lot of beginners have trouble with is that in HTML, if you have multiple spaces like this, for example, if we save this file and reload, you'll notice that all of these spaces just appear as one space on the website. That's because according to the syntax, extra spaces are essentially ignored. Beginners usually have trouble with this because, for example, if they want to add space between this button and this link, they would start adding spaces in front of the link, thinking that it will move it away from the button. If we save this and refresh, nothing happens, because all of these spaces are essentially ignored in HTML. Later in the course, we are going to learn how to deal with these situations, but for now, just keep this in mind. Another weird quirk of this syntax rule is that if I put my cursor here, press enter to create a new line, these new lines also count as spaces. The browser essentially ignores them. If I save the file and reload, you'll see that the new line doesn't do anything. For example, if I wanted some more space between these elements so that it's easier to read in my code, I can add as much space as I want, and it won't get reflected on the website. When we organize our code like this, we generally indent or add spaces in front of these lines. This helps us clearly tell the difference between the element's tags and its contents. Without this indenting, it's hard to tell where an element starts and ends, especially with a lot of code. Now, your indents might look different from mine. It might look something like this, with more spaces. This happens because by default, VS Code uses 4 spaces per indent. Generally, in HTML and CSS, we use 2 spaces per indent. To update this, clicking this icon, going into Settings, and searching for tab size. Scroll down and change the tab size from 4 to 2. Alright, we just learned the basics of HTML, how to write HTML code and turn it into a website. We also learned how to write HTML attributes, which modify the behavior of an element, and we covered syntax, the rules we have to follow when writing our code. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for part 2. Subscribe our channel.